Hi designers, it's Haley with Silver Moon Design School, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to create a 3D honey jar mockup using Adobe Illustrator and Adobe Dimension. It's a great mockup to showcase your label and packaging designs, to look stunning in your portfolio, and impress your clients. If you're short on time and just need the mockup, don't worry, you can download this on my Creative Market. I'll post the link below so you can just get the files and mock up your designs and go. Also, if you're using this tutorial to get unstuck on a project, don't worry, I offer one-on-one virtual coaching sessions where it will take 30 minutes and go through your project to get you unstuck and back on track. But if you have some time and you're ready to learn, then let's get started. Alright, so I'm in a new file in Illustrator that I just created, and I have two layers, one called Reference, where I've placed my reference image and locked it so I can't move it around as I trace over, as well as a design layer, which is where we're going to be working from. And I also have my label design here that I'm going to place on the mockup that I create in Adobe Dimension. So the first step is to turn on rulers. I hit Command R, or you can go to View, Guides, Show Guides. And then I'm going to use my rectangle tool. I hit M, but it's also located there on the sidebar, and I'm going to trace over the width of the honey container. And then with that box highlighted, I'm dragging a ruler to that center point so that we have our guide for how we're going to create the images. Alright, now I'm going to start with the base of the shape. I'm going to use my pen tool, and I'm going to start at the base, and I'm going to trace around the approximate shape of the jar, and I'm keeping the bottom line straight because I want to have a straight base. I don't want to follow that curve exactly because it'll just sit weird in Dimension. And this outside shape is pretty simple. It's got this lip right there. And then I'm going to stop right about there and flip to an outline instead of that solid fill while I clean up some of these edges, because now I'm going to select that whole path after I clean up some of the lines and use my smooth tool and just take it up to about 8% so that more of those lines are smooth, maybe 10, and maybe here at the bottom just do a little more smoothing, but the imperfections are what makes the design look realistic. But I also know that having a straight edge where you can apply your label is going to help in the end, because sometimes when you don't have this straight edge, the label can get a little warped. So I'm going to make a few alterations here, making sure that I'm aligning those two anchor points to be straight and then smoothing that curve out. Now I'm going to select that path, go to Object, Path, and Offset Path. And this is where I'm making the inside edge of the jar. So I think I'm going to choose 0.03, and that would be a good depth. Then I'm going to take my scissors tool and break this apart because we don't need that outside line. Highlighting the outside line and deleting it, and then moving these points so that they touch. And I'm going to make some modifications to the top section here, highlighting both paths and clicking Command J to join those together so that it's one unified solid path. And then I'm also going to round the top lip of the jar. And then I'll turn that to a solid fill so that we can see how it'll look when we use Revolve in just a second. Next, I'm going to focus on the lid shape. As you can see, it's a little off center from our center point, but that's okay. We are going to fix that. So using the pen tool, I'm going to trace around the top of this knob, and I'm following the entire edge. Since it's all the same material, we can make this the exact same piece, even though it probably would be two separate pieces. Let me actually flip to outline, and this is where we're going to match that up as best as we can. And I'm adding a little extra, not tracing it because it is off center, but you could adjust the thickness to whatever you'd like it to be. And then turning that to a solid fill, I'm going to make this bottom section its own piece because it's its own material. So same process of using our pen tool to trace around to create the rubber air stop. Gorgeous. I think that will look nice. And then we need to create one more disc. So for that, I'm just going to use my rectangle tool here, and it's got a little bit of a roundness to it. So I'm going to make it a little more angular and then selecting both, bevel in those angles so slightly, and I might do that to the top as well, just so it has a little more of a artistic finish. Next, we need to create the honey inside of the jar, so I'm going to make a copy. I'm going to Command D to duplicate this outside edge, and then we need to create the honey that is inside of the jar since it's its own separate shape. So I'm going to do Command V and then Command Shift V to copy and paste that in place. And then same as before, path and offset path, and I'm going to choose just 0.01, just the slightest. And then if we turn to an outline, you'll see that it lines up ever so slightly with leaving a little bit of room. And then using my scissors tool, I'm going to snip there and then snip here because we only need that inside line. And then using the pen tool again, I'm coming back up and connecting these dots. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of an imperfection to the honey on the top so that it doesn't look too solid and not gelatinous like we know it to be. So I'm just going to make it look a little bumpy so it has some movement. And again, I'm going to turn that to a solid fill. I can even use my eyedropper tool to change it to yellow so we can see more of a difference between the shapes. But let me turn that to an outline so that we can make our honeycomb dipper here. We're just going to trace the right half of this using the pen tool. So starting out, creating the discs, and it's at a little bit of an angle. So I'm going to line this up as best as I see that we can, kind of just in these stair-step motions. And if we have to adjust this after we use our revolve tool, then we will. And then I'm going to follow all the way up to the edge there and come back down so it is one solid piece. I'm going to isolate this dropper so I can have my A arrow selected or the direct selection tool, highlight all these anchor points so that I can curve these in and give them a nice bevel that's consistent across all, even adjusting if I see that we need to. Okay, now that we have all of our shapes, I'm going to open the 3D and Materials panel. If you don't have this open, it's under Window and 3D and Materials right here. Then I'm going to start clicking on my individual pieces and clicking on Revolve. So as you can see there, our lid is created. Revolve again, there's our rubber stopper. Click on Revolve again, that's that lower piece of the lid. Clicking Revolve for the jar. There's that duplicate we don't need. Going back to solid fill for the honey, clicking on Revolve. And finally the honey dipper, clicking Revolve. And now we have all of our pieces. So highlighting everything that we've created on this side, I'm going to right click, collect for export as multiple assets, and in the asset export panel, you'll see everything show up. And I like to just give those a name. Once you have those named, highlight all of them using Shift and click or individually highlighting and selecting. Come down to the Format tab and click on OBJ and then export those. And then the final thing we need to do is highlight our design file, the label file that we want to add, and I'm going to export that as a single asset and just name that Honey Jar label. And just with that one highlighted, I want that as a PNG because I have rounded edges and I don't want white in the corners, and then clicking on export as well. All right, now that we have our files exported, I'm opening up Adobe Dimension, going into my environment just to make the background white so my items are easier to see. And I'm going to rotate my canvas around so that I have a nice center point to move all of my shapes on. And then I'm just going to start placing. So the first thing I'm placing in is the jar, and I'm clicking this button to move to ground, scrolling in to get a closer look. Next, I'm placing in my honey that's going to go inside of the jar, getting that closer, and then bringing in the lid, getting that close enough. We're going to use our align tool in just a minute, so I'm not going to sweat this too bad, but just getting all of our pieces in, lower lid, and then finally the dipper. Okay, and then once I have everything placed in, I'm going to highlight everything and come to the align tools that are on the left, and I'm going to hit the center and center buttons, and then again get everything back in the center. Now I can start moving everything up using our tools, but it's kind of hard to see where things are. So I'm going to start applying materials, especially to the jar. So I'm going to choose glass for the jar and just drag the glass material right over the jar. This way I can start to see everything inside. So this is why I added a little bit of a gap, because you saw as I was moving it up, it's starting to like blur in with the glass, and we don't want it to have any weird reflections as we add our materials. So for honey, I'm going to choose beer because that's the closest liquid that we have to honey. And then for the lid, I'm going to start looking for wood grains. I think that a beech wood would look nice. So let me just test that out. Yeah, I like how the beech is looking. So I'm also going to group together now the lid and the lower lid into a folder and just call that lid, because I want to apply the beech wood to both of those, and that's the easiest way to do that. You can still open up the file, which is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to click on lower lid and remove that up to where it needs to be, which is a little bit higher. Same with the rubber, that also needs to be moved up closer to the lid since it is connected in real life. And then actually the honey dipper also needs to be that same beech color. So I'm putting the dipper into the lid folder together, and now I'm going to redrag beech over everything so that it applies the same wood grain texture to it all. So if I ever decide to change it in the future, then everything's already grouped. And then I'm going to come over to lighting and choose a 3-point light. And let's take a look at a preview. It's really bright, so I'm going to bring down the overall environment light to about 40%. And then within the honey, if we think that that beer color is maybe too yellow, under the material tab, once I have honey selected, I can scroll to base color, and I can choose one that is a little more amber colored to give us more of a orange blossom honey color, since that is what I'm calling out on my label. And we can add maybe a little bit of roughness since it is kind of viscous. Scrolling down to this absorption color and also tinting it a little more amber colored. Exploring to see what looks like our reference photo. It's pretty yellow, but I kind of like a little bit of an amber color in there as well. So let's see what looks like honey. I think that looks really nice. And just based on this reference photo, I think I need to come back on the roughness just slightly, maybe 0.09, just enough, but nothing crazy. And then it's time to create some camera views. I need a front angle for my mock-up, so I'm going to size this up and then just get this honey jar placed in an area that still includes some of the shadows that I need. And then I'm just going to adjust some more of the lights until I'm happy with the lighting. And then the last piece is to apply the label. So I'm just going to drag and drop my PNG onto the jar and size it down until I think that it fits nicely in the center, and just take another preview before we export. And then when you have your lighting and your placement, everything how you like, you can come over to this render tab and choose your camera setting from this menu, choose where you want to save it, the name, and then I usually save as a PSD so I can take out the background easily. You can also just render a draft, smaller size. This is where you get to customize your resolution size. I usually start with the medium just to see how it looks, but then in the end I'll choose high or custom. High is usually enough, and if you need it to be 300 dpi, I'll take it into Photoshop afterwards. But yeah, once you're ready to go, you just click render. And here's the final look. Alright designers, that wraps up this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and want to see more, please subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos, and comment below with what you'd like to see next. Until next time.